I'm a small town girl from Montana and I was working at Disney, I had arrived. And that's really the first thing that I remember addressing when I sat with ayahuasca the first time 20 some years ago. That's really what came in almost right away is like, nice life you have, too bad you hate it.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Love, Loss, and Hallucinations. I am Scott Schumaker, your host. And before we dive in here today, we are definitely going to be talking about plant medicine. So I want to put out this little disclaimer that this content is for educational and harm reduction purposes only. We do not promote or support illegal activity, the sale or use of restricted substances, or the use of associated tools and accessories for those restricted substances. And last but not least, you should always consult a qualified professional for your health decisions. My guest today, I'm very excited to have her on. I have been following her for a while on the socials, I guess, and receiving her newsletter and all that sort of thing. Very wise woman joining us, and her name is Kat Courtney. And Kat is a traditionally trained ayahuasquera and wachuma, carrying plant medicine lineages of the Shipibo, Canibo, Quechua Lamista, and the Shavan people. She is the founder of Plant Medicine People, which organizes retreats, courses, and coaching around a number of sacred plants, not just psychedelic ones. I think that's important to note. And she is also the co-founder of Base, which I hope I said right, an ibogaine retreat center in Mexico. And last but not least, she is a death doula, all of which makes her perfect to join me on today's episode of Love, Loss, and Hallucinations. Welcome to the show, Kat.
Thank you. I do feel like we're just perfect for this conversation. We're kind of passionate about the same avenues. So thank you for having me.
Yes. As I said, I'm so excited to have you on here. And I'm just going to put it up front. Like, if you don't follow her on Instagram or socials or whatever, wherever you follow stuff, she is definitely worth a follow because she is quite wise and has a lot of good experience and things to share with all of you out there around these themes. So before we, dive into the plant medicine stuff itself, I always like to give the listeners a little background on who you are as a person, like where you were that kind of led you to your current position of being deep in a shaman of plant medicine, I would say. And I know, it's a far cry from Disneyland, which I think is involved in your journey a bit.
Love that you dripped that in. Yeah, I worked at Disney for almost a decade in the corporate space before I found plant medicine. And I think it's a very common story that I have. On paper, my life was good. But in reality, I was miserable. Like, I didn't love myself. I was self-medicating with alcohol almost every single day. I lived in LA, so I was bulimic because I was trying to look the part of the ideal woman because I didn't have self-worth. And so trying to chase the ideal that doesn't exist. And I was just really lost. And I felt even more guilty about not loving my life because it was good on paper. Like, I had a lot of great things. I mean, I'm a small town girl from Montana and I was working at Disney, I had arrived, so to speak.
Amazing.
And I didn't feel that way. So, and that's really the first thing that I remember addressing when I sat with ayahuasca the first time 20 some years ago. That's really what came in almost right away is like, nice life you have, too bad you hate it.
Wow.
What do I do about that? What brought me to this path is the same thing. What brings most people is I needed healing. I really lost, and the Western medical model wasn't working.
Yeah. Well, I feel a lot of people, no matter where they are on that success ladder, can certainly, what we define in the US as success ladder, can really relate to that, like supposedly having it all from the outside, but just feeling hollow inside. So how did you end up? Because this was, 20 plus years ago. Ayahuasca is not a big thing. You and I both know that. I first experienced it in like mid 2000s. So how did you find your way to this rather strong plant medicine?
A lot of my stories began this way back in the day. I followed a guy, Scott. I was dating
All right.
somebody who had been to the jungle 6 years prior. And he was like, "Oh,
Okay.
you want to go to this thing, ayahuasca?" I'm like, "I don't know what that is, but sure, sounds fun." Like, I had zero idea what I was getting into.
Wow.
I thought it was just an adventure, which it was, but I didn't realize that it was not fun times on psychedelics because I was very familiar with medicines but had no idea how different ayahuasca would be. But but I followed a guy who said, "Let's go do it," and without
Wow.
any research, nothing, I hopped on an airplane.
I mean, that's incredible because like when I did it, it suddenly started, as often happens with plant medicine, and just started showing up. And like, I was like, what is this ayahuasca stuff that I keep like hearing about randomly? And then I read that National Geographic Explorer piece that a lot of people read back then. And, that talks about like going through hell and coming back and experiencing demons. And I was like, yeah, sure. That sounds great. I'm in, so to go there and, dive in with like zero expectations that's brave in its own new world. So,
or crazy, or just plain crazy, which I would wear that proudly back then. Yeah. But I think the National Geographic article was out by the time, but I didn't read it until afterwards. When I came home, I was like, what is that? And there was so little information. I mean, hey letters, like I went and read some of the old stuff, but there was so little info now.
Yeah.
Now there's tons of info. Yeah. Too much almost. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I remember reading, there was one piece I found on like, I think Alta Vista, that old search engine, about like some research place in South America, maybe using it to get people to help them beat a cocaine addiction. So I was like, well, that seems healthy, but that was it. That was literally all. So how, after that first experience, how did that shift? Obviously it shifted your trajectory because we're here talking about it right now, but like, when did it hit that, oh my gosh, like this is my new path in life?
Well, it hit immediately in terms of like, I found my medicine. Like it was like coming home, which made no sense to my ego because, my mind going, all right, you're in the middle of a room of strangers in the Amazon jungle drinking this powerful thing that's making you purge and cry. And like, how are you home? But I felt I was in love with her. And, that got tested the second ceremony when I went through the first dark night of the soul with that.
Oh, geez.
But I still trusted, and I remember that was like an interesting trait that not everybody has now that I've been in the space, is that I trusted that the medicine was just showing me my shadow, my darkness, my pain. I did not in any way vilify her. I was like ready for that next night of medicine because I'm like, this is my salvation, which, wow, that I knew that I am so grateful that there is some deep part of me that's like, I trust this. Otherwise, if there were Ubers in the Amazon, I might have taken one at one point of me out. But, I was in love from the get-go in terms of it being my path of healing. It took me a couple of years to admit, like, can I learn to do this? This white girl in Montana, I had no knowledge if that was even allowed. And nor did I have enough self-esteem to even admit it until, 2 to 3 years in when I vocalized that nervously, I don't know if I'm capable of it, but it's in my heart. So it took a while.
Well, and I think there's something valuable about that actually. And that, there's often you hear now, like someone will go and they'll do one ceremony and they're like, I'm going to be a shaman, like that immediately, which, it happens a lot. And so to have that 2 or 3 years where you're like sort of building up to it, and it's not an immediate, like, I would say ego hit sometimes that we're like, I'm going to be a shaman. I think that is important to note in your path.
Agree. Yeah. And for me, it was, lack of self-worth, all of that. I think it all wisdom in there. Hold your ponies. You've got some healing to do before you and to think. I also had the greatest of all mentors because the place
Mm,
that I went to out of the gate, how blessed I was with Spirit Quest, which was led by Howard Lawler. He wasn't the ayahuasquero, but he was the owner, and he became like a second father to me out of.
mm.
And he saw all of this like sparkle of like, oh, I love this world, and was very just paramount in helping me take my time, but also gain the courage of like, maybe I could do this. Like without him telling me I was perfect for this work, yeah, I
Mm.
think I'd be sitting here.
Oh, that's beautiful. And so, I mean, back then, 20 years ago, there's definitely, I feel like, some resistance still about training Westerners. And then add to that, you're a woman, which is definitely also less rare. But it sounds like you had a mentor that was sort of already a doorway that sort of helped open that for both, despite being a Westerner and a woman.
Yeah, well, he was a Westerner too, living in Peru at
Yeah.
that point for almost 2 decades. And he served
Mm.
Chuma, which I would later train with him, but I had the ayahuasca bug out of the gate. It did give me that reflection of, yes, the white person can, the woman complexity. I wanted to end up training with a woman, but I couldn't find one because
Mm.
I've sat with a couple maestras in the Shipibo tradition, but they don't even speak Spanish, let alone English. I'm
Right.
not fluent in Quechua or Shipibo. So that was a tricky thing. But yes, I did have a mentor that gave me yes, it's allowed. You can do that.
Mm.
But it took me a while to find my teacher that would say yes, because
Yeah.
kiss some frogs, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah. And speaking of, well, first I want to just to like educate people who may not know, what does it mean when in your bio, it says you are trained in the lineage of these three different indigenous people, sorry.
Yeah. So, I mean, it turns out, which I didn't know any of this in the beginning, right? That I think there's at least like 50 tribes that work with ayahuasca and all of
Mm-hmm.
them in their own unique way. And I just happened to sit with the Shipibo out of the gate and just kind of fell madly in love, not only with the medicine, but how they work. And little did I know they are known as kind of the hardcore, like strong medicine and strict container. And like, I didn't know any of that. I was like, what I like. And so when I decided to start training, I wanted to learn in that tradition, that
Mm-hmm.
art, because I sit in other traditions, but I don't know how to operate because there's a lot of differences. So that's, especially with ayahuasca, it's just a lot of different perspectives of how to work with her. And I think they're all beautiful, but
Right.
I know one really well. And the Quechua Lamista tradition is similar. And the Quechua Lamista is really where I learned to hold plant diets, which is an aspect of working with ayahuasca.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What defines a plant diet? I mean, I know, again, there's a bunch of different ones depending on who you're sitting with and, what indigenous tradition you're under. So I guess maybe just give a general description of what it is and why.
Yeah, in a very general sense, it's a relationship between a human and a plant. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
I call it a marriage because it requires a lot of restrictions, sacrifices. We cut out all kinds of lifestyle and food things in order to maximize the connection to the plant. And the reason we do that, I mean, there's lots of reasons, lots of healing opportunities and lessons and teachings. But in the ayahuasca tradition, the Shipibo believe that the plant diets help to strengthen our connection to ayahuasca and to find different superpowers, if you will, that work in the context of being in her space. So the plant diets are like additional teachers, essentially. Yeah.
Can you give an example of how that diet helped you learn from ayahuasca?
Oh, yeah. Like the one that's life-changing is my teacher recognized early on that I had no sense of energetic boundaries, no sense of protection. And
Mm.
of us that have sat with the plants, we know, oh my gosh, you get so vulnerable, just so cracked open. And I was just getting inundated by the suffering in the room and the energies and just like taken down. So he put me on a very long diet with white sage, one of the most protective, and not, an Amazonian plant, but he was a Westerner that trained in the Amazonian traditions. He's like, you need this plant. And it changed everything. And I can't even really tell you how, because it wasn't mental. It was energetic, where I just started learning like, boundaries of no, that can't come into my field, just sovereignty energy.
Mm.
And I don't know how I would do this work without having learned that. I'd probably be dead or crazy by now. Energies are so intense, right? And you got to
Yeah.
know how
Yeah.
to protect your space. So that's my classic example of that was a game changer. Mhm.
Wow. Yeah. And so was that both in ceremonies as well as in, this normal day-to-day life that you were able to put up these boundaries?
Absolutely. And I had to learn
Wow.
both because you don't really separate your everyday life with your ceremony life. Like it all comes like in a marriage, if you will. So yes, absolutely.
Interwoven.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think I read somewhere as another part of your training, you did something like 30 you sat with ayahuasca 30 times by yourself,
Hmm.
like I imagine in the jungle and with other whatever creatures are coming to by to say hi.
It wasn't in the jungle. Here's what's interesting.
Oh, it wasn't.
It was at my home in Las Vegas, which is a different kind of jungle.
That is wow, that's a setting.
I was living in Vegas at the time and we were hosting ceremonies there back in the day. And it was part of the apprenticeship with, I was
Mm.
probably 6 years into training by then. And my teacher gave me a bottle, like a big old liter bottle, and said, you're going to drink this every night until it's empty. And, and I was like, oh, okay. But boy, that also was a game changer of just really learning more of how to work with her intensity when I was tired, when I was triggered,
Mm.
agitated, all of the things. And
Wow.
yeah, and just learn to trust myself in that space
Yeah.
more as a result of that. But that was a long month. I think it was like 34, 35 days it ended up being. Yeah.
Ah, wow. Yeah.
Never
I've done like 5 in a bat, sort of within 6 days, and that's a lot. So I can't imagine.
That's a lot too. Although to be
Yeah.
fair, it is different when you're solo. You're not dealing with the energy of other people.
Right.
There is
course.
something that in some ways is harder because nobody's there to hold space for you, but in some ways is easier. It's just your own energy. So
Yeah.
there is that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and one last question before we kind of get into each of the medicines. I'm just wondering how long was your training until you were someone was like, okay, you're to a level now where you can call yourself a shaman or whatever you might want to call yourself, ayahuasquera. That she's shaking her head. Yes, that is the more appropriate term. So
I'm a white girl. I'm not a shaman,
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But how long did that process take for you?
About a decade, really. So
Yeah.
it was a couple of years of sitting and then 8.5 years of training.
Wow.
And when I accepted the apprenticeship, it was a minimum of 7 years. That was what, and that's normal for the Shipipo. It's kind of like getting a medical degree, like you've got to go through the whole process. So, but it took me a little longer because I was nervous. And even when I started pouring, I was still like, are you sure I should do this? This is what a responsibility. So, and that was about 10, 11 years ago now. So
Wow.
I've been doing my own thing since then of like, and
Wow.
growing, a little at a time and sometimes a lot at a time. Because I will tell you, I went from serving, a handful of people in the community I was comfortable with to being hired by Rhythmia and pouring for 100 people. Just like that. It was like, wait, too fast, but I figured it out.
Wow. Well, in Rhythmia, yeah. I mean, I have friends who have gone to Rhythmia and they've had great experiences there. And obviously they take precautions, even though it's large groups. I mean, when I hear 100 people, it kind of blows my mind, to be honest. But
I will
never again.
It is like plugging holes in the Titanic. It is just way too much energy. And I couldn't even remember everybody's name, let alone their intentions and their medical history and like all of this.
Yeah.
I learned a lot of what I don't want to do there, but like that was boot camp. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So now when you're running your own retreats, what's like your ideal size?
Well, first of all, I like to have a team. I don't want to do this solo because support is important. So we like to have a ratio of 1 facilitator per a maximum of 5 participants. So we have a team of 5 of us. We're usually like mid-20s. That's my sweet spot. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. And you live in Portland now, but you don't do ceremonies in the US. Is that
No, I was
correct?
arrested 4 years ago.
Yes.
40 years in prison. So no, I'm good. I went to Costa Rica. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, unfortunately, you fell into that weird gray area that we're still in,
Yep.
where some places, states are saying it's legal, but the Fed is like, no. And yeah, you got dinged for
A
having some
single
plant medicine.
small package of medicine that they want
Yeah.
to charge me with conspiracy because obviously I have a company where we do retreats. Not in the US jurisdiction, though. We don't do retreats here, but somehow they decided they were going to throw the book at me. So I was facing 40 years in prison and had to go through
Wow.
several days in jail and a whole legal process. So I'm not pouring in the States now.
Well, yes, understand. So, that's a whole different kind of level of loss, loss of freedom, loss of money, loss of, whatever, like livelihood, because you're stuck dealing with all this crap. Um, but as they say, often these hard things tend to teach us things. So I'm wondering if anything came from that besides not pouring in the US. What else might that have taught you, that whole experience?
So many, we could talk for days, but the highlights are the reason why that package was sent to me is I agreed to do something as a favor to someone else. And I always knew because I'm public, I'm the messenger. I bring in the people and
Mm-hmm.
somebody I work with brings in the medicine. And the one time I broke that, Scott, of course,
Mm.
how I got arrested. And I just sat in jail going, you dumbass. You know, you're not supposed to be a martyr for this. Like you knew not to do that. And so that lesson of just sticking to my guns around my instincts and knowing what my role is. And Aya sometimes calls me Little Miss Fix It. Like I just run around. I have to fix people's problems. And so that was a big wake up call. Wait. This is not, I don't have to fix everyone's problems. Like I don't need to be self-sacrificial because that's how that all
Yeah.
happened.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, back to the boundaries, right?
Yes. I need another diet with sage. Like,
yeah. So you run ayahuasca retreats, and then you also do ibogaine retreats in Base, which is at your group Base, which is I think based in Mexico. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah. How did that evolve?
Yeah. Again, relationship. I was in a relationship with a woman actually for many years whose life was saved by ibogaine, and she ran a clinic in Mexico with a couple of toxic men that she decided like I'm going to leave that and asked me if I would come on and create the client experience integration because I've been working in integration for like 15 plus years. And so I'm honored. Like I am not a carrier of that medicine. I was patient zero. I did get to sit with it and learn, the differences, but it is such a joy to watch people, with ibogaine, people often are at the edge of death. They're opiate, alcoholic, severe PTSD, suicidal ideation, all of the things. And it is so powerful for doing a neurological reset. So it is like such a joy to get to watch people get a new chapter of their lives that they thought would never come, and it's so different from ayahuasca. So yeah, I'm lucky.
Yeah, well, that was on my question list. How would you say like both, well, since you mentioned it, ibogaine and ayahuasca, and then I have a different question as well about kind of differences between medicine. And I guess, both the differences between them and why someone might be pulled to one versus the other.
Well, ayahuasca is the quintessential feminine medicine, right? Mother, and she is equally strong as ibogaine, but she is a patient mom sometimes. Like she'll dance with us in our shadow. Where ibogaine, at least my experience, this very masculine medicine is like truth. Like very direct. And if you don't want to hear it, it doesn't care. Like we're coming in full throttle. And Aya is unpredictable in that way. I mean, she's a woman, she's feminine. Like, so she can come in strong, soft, gentle, where ibogaine is just like boom, like the medicine of truth. And so the reason why, people vector more towards ibogaine sometimes is because of the neurological reset. Ayahuasca is great for PTSD, but she doesn't occupy the opiate receptor sites
Mm,
the same way ibogaine does. So ibogaine is the only medicine, at least that we're aware of, that for people dealing with opiate addiction, not only cuts through like that initial craving, but the post-acute withdrawal symptoms. And ibogaine,
hmm.
very long half-life, much longer than ayahuasca. DMT
Yes.
gets out pretty fast, right? And you have some neuroplasticity in the integration, but with ibogaine, it will stay in your system for 1 to 3 months, depending on the speed of your metabolism. So you got this incredible window
Wow.
to make some significant changes. So I recommend ibogaine for people with severe PTSD and addiction because of this incredible reset that it does. But it's intense.
Yes, that's. I've had a NFL football player on recently.
Robert, yeah.
Yeah, Robert.
Wow.
Yeah, and also, he had TBI and brain injury and scarring, and it really turned his life around as well. So, yeah, he was great. But so that's ibogaine and ayahuasca. Now, I believe you've also have experience with iboga, which ibogaine is a derivative of.
Not
And from what I've heard, I have experience with neither. So what I've heard, there is some differences between these two experiences, and I'm wondering if you can dive into that.
I can only do anecdotally because I have yet to sit with iboga
Oh, okay.
I am very called to do so, and we're affiliated with our ibogaine clinic with a group in Gabon that serve iboga in a traditional way. Because what is important to us is to make sure that we are replanting iboga because it's
Yeah.
like near extinct in some places because we've been taking too much out. So, and we have a cultural advisor that is a 20-something generation iboga priestess. Like
Wow.
she embodies this medicine. So we're very culturally aware, even though what we do is more medical because ibogaine needs to be medical. And I'm just making plans to go sit with iboga because it's fascinating when people come and work with ibogaine to hear what they feel the differences are between iboga and ibogaine. Because ibogaine is one alkaloid from iboga, right? Iboga's got a whole lot more that I'm sure creates a somewhat similar but different experience, but I haven't done it yet.
Okay. My research was off there. For some reason I thought you had, but okay. And just for listeners out there who don't know, Gabon is where the tree-ish shrub is located, the iboga shrub, and that's where that medicine comes from. Now, you mentioned earlier a little bit about the shadow and how plant medicines can help us explore those. And why, in your experience, and I ask this because I feel like, a lot of traditional religions or Western culture, maybe, everyone's about the light, we got to go to the light. And it's all like going up towards the light. And I'm wondering why you, in your experience, both from personal as well as holding these ceremonies and seeing how it affects others, like why it is important to dive into the shadows.
Great question. I like how you even vocalize shadow. Feels because if we go directly to the light without having traversed our shadow, we have no capacity to be in relationship with that light. That's what we call bypassing spiritual space, right?
Yeah.
Like, for example, if I try to convince you that I'm just happy, I'm happy all the time, everything's great. And that isn't true because I haven't processed my pain and my trauma and my anger and all of that. I'm not actually in relationship with that joy because I got to go through the stuff that is preventing that full relationship first. I love the Joseph Campbell's work of the hero's journey. The hero goes multiple times because that's where we learn. And if you can think of the shadow as just the kind of the painful parts of our psyches, like we can't know more about joy without knowing more about sadness, as an example. We're in duality. So you want to learn about hot, you got to learn about cold. So if we try to avoid our shadow, we don't actually get to experience the states of consciousness we want to with the light. It doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah. Everything gets deeper once you kind of experience both sides, right? And it also reminds me, like Hero's Journey and the Carl Jung quote that is, that which you need will be found where you least want to look, or something like that, you know?
Yes, that. Yes. And
Yeah.
it's the places we don't want to go. And we fight
Yeah.
crazy in our daily lives, and the
Yeah.
medicines don't, they win the fight. They're like, oh, that's cute. You can resist all you want, but we're doing it. Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes you just got to do it.
Yes.
um, I get, one thing as I was thinking about this, our discussion this morning, I was curious, like, what is something that you've witnessed plant medicine heal that surprised you?
I feel surprised every time. So I just drank them last week, and well, what surprises me, I think, is the level of which we're often traumatized and we don't even know it. Like what
Mm,
we're carrying and how
hmm.
they know and they have access.
Yeah.
But I sat next to a woman once who had like stage 4 cancer, breast cancer, and she was just like there to make peace with her passing. And the shaman came and did a healing on her chest, and we both saw this black smoke kind of leave, and she's still in remission and alive and well. Like,
Wow.
what? Just like
What?
watching these incredible. And the fact that she didn't even think that that was possible and it still happened, because sometimes we think, oh, we have to be intentional, which is helpful. But it
Right.
was just like this magical co-creation.
Wow.
Yeah. So those kinds of things
Wow.
never stop making me feel awed of like,
Mm,
wow.
that's so cool. I imagine that's something you love about this work.
Very much so. Yes.
Yeah.
Not just shadow. It's also magic. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And, speaking of someone making peace, plant medicine is very good to help people who are about to pass over, like make peace with that if they aren't already, sort of that experience dying before you die scenario. And I imagine, at what point on this journey that you've been on did you go ahead and like incorporate the whole death doula training and offering?
Well, I loved death before I loved ayahuasca, before I knew ayahuasca.
Mm.
'Cause I was born with an underdeveloped respiratory system and spent a good chunk of my childhood in an oxygen tent. And my first
Wow.
memory is knowing that I could, hit the pillow and go to sleep and go home. But my mom's face on the other side of the tent looked so sad that I remember thinking, oh, I don't want to hurt the nice lady, so I'll stay. Like,
Mm.
and that's my first memory. And so I used to, as a kid, just write poetry about death because I loved it. Like I cherished it. I didn't forget that for whatever reason. So when I met ayahuasca and then found out her name means vine of the dead or vine of the soul, I'm like,
Hmm.
no wonder, I love it. And my work with her personally is about loving life, not trusting death, because I have that innately. And I joke with her that birth is hard, death is easy, that humanity's got it backwards,
Mm.
my estimation. But so I guess it was maybe 8 years in where I realized, there's death doula certification. I might as well get the official certification and have that as an offering to the plant medicine community, not just when they know that they're dying, but just to help create
Hmm.
trusting relationship with death, because that just changes everything. When we trust that we're going someplace beautiful, we can enjoy life a lot more, because we're so afraid of what is coming for all of us. And
Mm.
I don't think there's any need for that if we really lean in and create a relationship.
Yeah. And what did you learn anything from that death doula training that, say, medicine hadn't already sort of shown you?
Oh, for sure. I studied with the Conscious Dying Institute in Colorado,
Mm.
led by Tara Brock, and like incredible.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And really what I learned, not so much about death itself, but how to really work with people in creating that relationship of like, asking the right questions to have them explore like this part of their spiritual experience. So learn
Mm.
a lot about how to work with people, how to create ceremony for death. Like, which that's my ultimate. There's nothing more sacred than being with somebody as they transition. That's
Yeah.
the pinnacle. And to help people make that sacred, because we don't really do that in our culture. We fight, and it's not sacred in the hospital, is it? Mm-mm.
No, not so much.
So we're missing out on letting our last moments here be ceremony, be
Hmm.
sacred. So yeah, I learned a lot about that.
Mm. Well, having like both plant medicine and the death doula training, like how would you envision your last moments?
On wachuma, first of all.
Okay.
I want that medicine in my body if I get to have a say so. And it's interesting you should ask, because that's something I do with my coaching clients a lot, is on Halloween for myself every year, I do what I call my death wish list, which is
Mm,
all the things I would like to have present should this year be the year that I transition. The people I want there, the animals, the music I'm
mm,
playing. I have a death song. I have a song I want playing when I transition. What's my last meal? Like all of these things that my mind can control, because it can't control the death. So, so I do that every year just to sit with, well, if this is my year, what do I want it to look like?
I love that. That is so great. Cause like, it's like everyone says like practice for this, practice for that, practice to get good at whatever. And you're like practicing dying basically to be like there and ready and good with it when it comes. I mean, what a great idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. And why wachuma? I just had someone on this week, his Samir, who is very wachuma oriented, and he's awesome. And I definitely recommend going to listen to that episode. But why would you want to be on wachuma when you pass?
Because my estimation is what wachuma brings when I'm peaking is what death feels like. Wachuma cutting off the head. So it's a pure somatic heart experience. And in the tradition that I study, they often did that. They would give people wachuma when they were transitioning, which feels like it would be a very graceful transition then. Because when I'm in my heart, I am just surrendered of like, okay, it's my turn. So
Yeah.
medicine is my happy place. Yeah, I feel safe in that vibration. Ayahuasca, not so much all the time. She works on that.
Yeah, she can be a little hard sometimes.
Wachuma is my happy place personally, and so that's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes total sense to me. I also big fan of wachuma, so I get it. But perhaps those out there, I know it's not quite the go-to I would say for plant medicine these days, but it's beautiful. It really is. Yeah. So through all this experiences that you've had, sitting with medicine, I'm sure over 1,000 times, and what is something that this could be in general about medicine or what a specific medicine has shown you. But what is something it's taught you about love that you've been able to bring into your like daily existence?
Oof, lovely question. Well, one of the most challenging things about ayahuasca is she challenges us to love the parts of ourselves that we don't think are lovable. And boy, was that confronting out of the gate. I had an issue with integrity when I first started drinking ayahuasca because I lied a lot as a kid. It was a form of defensiveness, right? Which now I didn't know then. I hated myself for it. And she would just be like, oh my God, you're so cute when you lie. Look at you. Just adorable. I'm like, no, don't feel that. And it took a long time to realize that those things that I hated about myself were actually just begging for love. And they weren't going to until I said, all right, I love you. I love, my integrity. I love how I put my foot in my mouth sometimes and say the absolute wrong thing. Like to really get to that place to genuinely love these parts. Like that, just learning how limited our definition of love often is. That's one of the greatest teachings of the medicines is, and we love the parts that we think are unlovable. That's big.
Which is healing for the part and for you and for those around you. Yeah. I was just actually writing about that today about how, everyone talks about self-love and it is lovely, but to just say it and to kind of describe it to someone and be like, oh, you should love yourself. Like it's very kind of ephemeral in the day-to-day, like living as life and being a human being. But in my experience, and it sounds like the same with you with plant medicine, it allows you to really like get into your soul, into your bones, and like have this deeper connection with yourself and with the love that is needed for all parts.
Yeah, I love you've emphasized it a couple times today, the depth. That
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how to get to those deep spaces without plant medicine, because that's
Mm-hmm.
been my catalyst. Is it possible with meditation, all of the things? Absolutely. But I
Yeah.
didn't grow up with a relationship with any of those sort of cultural things. It was medicines that taught me, wow, the depth that always existed inside of me, but I didn't know how to access until that. Now I know how to access it. Now I know from
Yeah.
powerful emotions and grief and loss and all of that, that's a portal to be with that. But I didn't know that then. I was trying to avoid all of that, of course.
Well, and I think that's such a great point about, if you don't grow up like with a meditation practice from when you're very little and you're not like just steeped in it, there's very few ways, I think, in our culture to like access that experience. And, therapy, you can eventually get there over years and years and years. And so, we do have a finite time on this planet. So plant medicines can help get us to these places faster and, improve everyone's world, I would say. Um, the flip side of what is something you've learned about love that you carry with you on a daily basis is what has the plants taught you about grief and loss?
That they are just as connected to love as anything else.
Mm,
That it is a privilege to love
mm,
in a way where we experience the feeling of loss. I remember last year my soul kitty died, like this
mm.
creature that was just perfect, right? Never did anything wrong ever. And I loved him all in. And when he was transitioning, thanks to the lessons from the medicine, I was very present to it. Like,
Mm,
instead of wanting to push that away, I treated it as a privilege of like, what an honor to have loved in this way that my heart is like ripping into, and that I just kind of have the intrinsic understanding now that the two have to go together. They can't
yeah.
be separated. And the degree to which I will grieve is the degree to which I love. And
Mm,
that's beautiful. It's painful, but it's beautiful.
yeah. Painful but beautiful. Back to the light and shadow and happiness and sadness and,
Yeah,
fully experiencing and allowing ourselves to fully experience these emotions. And so they don't get stuck in us and cause all sorts of other problems, right?
there's that. Yes, not
Yeah.
feeling those. It's not like they go anywhere then. Yes. And then we
Yeah.
wonder why we're so sick as a culture that isn't celebrating the intensity of feeling.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah. Feel, people. Allow yourself to feel. You can do it by yourself in your bedroom, but let it flow.
Please, for all of
Uh,
us.
for all of us, exactly. Yeah, there's people I can think of that could use some more emotional flow. Let's put it that way.
The norm. Most of us are not taught that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, 100%. Well, and I touched on this earlier that you know you certainly are steeped in plant medicine, and you're a great resource for that. But you don't, plant medicine people, which is your newsletter and your Instagram, and probably some other things that I'm not aware of. But it's you also do talk about non-psychedelic plants. Maybe it's ginger or rose or lavender or yarrow, tulsi, those sorts of things. I'm wondering if there's one like favorite that comes to mind as far as like what it's good for and how people might be able to use it for themselves.
That's like picking a favorite child, but I'll name the first one
Okay.
that you didn't name already. All of those, yeah, is a plant that people in the plant medicine world are becoming aware of, but isn't well known in our culture, is bobenzana. And
Mm.
Bobenzana is like, I think she's the Amazonian plant outside of ayahuasca that's becoming most popular because she's heart medicine. Like,
Mm.
wildly beautiful heart opening medicine, and also very shadowy because she will confront these parts that we don't love. So she's not necessarily easy to work with, but just the impact she's had on my life, watching
Mm.
a lot of the people in the community create a relationship with this plant. She's just revered in the Amazonian traditions because, I mean, even from how she grows, she's not a tall plant. And when the Amazon rains come, she gets decimated. But and you think there's no way this tree is going to come back to life. And a day or two later, pop, out she comes, and she has these pink pom-pom flowers that are so gorgeous. And so the
Hmm.
results that she teaches, like I think it's just medicine that our culture really needs. So
Mm.
shout out to Bobenzana.
Well, and you can certainly find information about her and perhaps how to use it on, I think, your website.
Yes.
But in general, like if someone was going to say do not a full dieta, but a something that they could kind of work into their life here, it'd really just be like what, like making a tea out of her every day, and like try to like avoid sugar a lot and meat a lot, maybe for that time that you're sitting with her for a couple weeks, that sort of thing.
I call that dating the plant. Remember I said
Dating, I like that. Dating the plant. Okay.
marrying the plant, but we don't have to marry. We don't marry every person that we date. So we don't have to marry every plant that we're like, hey, I want to get to know this plant. So yeah, like Bobenzana is actually readily available now. Any of the plants that we're called to, as long as we do the homework to make sure they don't have toxicity, which some of them do. And then to go
Right.
gentle in the beginning, because sometimes we're allergic and we don't know it. Like, and these things are serious, but to be gentle to start with if it's a new plant. But yeah, if the body says yes, like you can get to know. I have a cup of hibiscus right now. I'm just sipping away. Like we're getting to know each other. She's pretty amazing. So highly encourage people to be really conscious of that connection, because it's really quite special, like to get to be in relationship with these amazing beings.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's also probably important in that sort of dating scenario that you are, really trying to pay attention to like subtle shifts, maybe try to journal around it in the morning or in the evening, just to like see how your day is changing and if it's changing and if it's the right plant for you. Yeah.
Yeah, we got to measure success some way. I mean, I think of it just like microdosing protocols that people are starting to get familiar with, that we have to bring our intentions and our awareness and and with dating a plant, there's probably going to be subtle shifts. It's not going to be like a light switch, but to pay attention to that and to see, hey, I'm a little lighter today. I feel good, and just that, because that's significant.
I love that. And it just helps you be present no matter what.
Exactly.
So,
Always.
and we all could use that. Amen. Before I get to my last little 3 sort of speedish questions, I'm curious, like, what do you have coming up that you're excited about? And is there any place I haven't already mentioned that, I should include in the show notes where people can find you?
You've named Basay for ibogaine and plant medicine people for ayahuasca. With ayahuasca, we do 4 retreats a year in Costa Rica. So they're happening basically every quarter. And we have different themes for each retreat and working with the medicine. I mean, I will say next year in January, we're doing one with wachuma and ayahuasca. So I always love when I get to pair those 2 together. My happiness. Yeah.
That's exciting. So yeah, hit that Plant Medicine People website for information on that. And let's see. Oh yeah, 3 questions. Here we go. First question is, what is a recent, what is a recent hallucination or somewhat recent hallucination? However you want to define that. It doesn't have to involve plant medicine. Could be some altered state, or it could be something that you were like, oh, I thought it was going to be like this, but it turned out to be like that. That you have had, that you have learned from.
Well, I did just drink medicine a few nights ago, so
okay.
It's fresh. And it was the coolest thing. What happened is in the vision, it was like this gnarly looking skull, freaky, scary looking thing. And I noticed that when I smiled, it smiled back. And it was just one of those powerful moments of recognizing how much of an impact we have around our own reality. It was like, okay, it's kind of like the memojis on the iPhones that it'll follow your facial features. Like if you
Yeah.
doing that a bit, and then it wasn't so scary. So I was like, I know that that's what it was. It was a teaching around how my inner world impacts my outer world. Like,
Mm.
and so without. And so I sat up and was smiling of like, I got this. And the scary images turned light and playful. And so I was like, oh, another cracking the code, just a little bit more with that. So yeah, that was fun.
Yeah. I love that. The cracking of the code always, it continues. It never ends, right?
Correct. I'm 22 years in and just, scratching the surface. I might be
Yeah.
in elementary school, 5th grade-ish, I think. Yeah. That's what I'm feeling. Yeah.
which means the rest of us aren't even started kindergarten yet, but
Well, it depends on where we're at as a soul,
Yeah.
it's more
Good
than
point.
what's happening here, but yeah. Yeah. It takes a while.
Awesome. Just a quick aside, that actually reminds me of the first, if not one of the first visuals I had on ayahuasca, which was the first psychedelic plant medicine that I'd ever done, was flying through the eye hole of a skull, of a Dia de los Muertos skull. And I was like, okay, here we go.
Oh, she just started like classic for you. Like, let's just Portal Jeff. And yeah.
Exactly.
Times.
Second question is, and you may have already sort of answered this, but what is something you have lost or had to let go of in the last month or year or something like that you have also learned from?
Well, in the same ceremony, I recognized I was holding on to the identity of having been victimized by the system and being arrested. And I had to let go of my victim story of like, oh, I was, wronged. And in order to heal that. So it was it was something I didn't even realize I was holding on to. So is just this story around, the system did me wrong. And it was in the way of me feeling better about the whole thing. So
wow.
Yeah. So
and what a lifting and like release and just like being able to breathe deeper, right? Yeah.
And not feel like a victim anymore. Like literally. Yeah. And so I'm only 4 days into that of like, wow. I feel so much better now. It's like, it's okay that it happened. It's okay. It was my rite of passage.
Yeah. Wow. That is beautiful.
Yeah.
And last but not least question is, what are you loving right now and why?
Mm-hmm. I am loving continuing to be a student of my own triggers. Like I am recently out of a relationship, but still trying to navigate. Like I normally run away once I'm done. And this time I'm like, no, I want to maintain a friendship because I'm not done figuring out what these triggers are all about. So I am loving really trusting that alchemy works in terms of sitting with the discomfort of fear, resistance, all of that, and knowing that there is another side to it. An aspect of shadow work, but relational. Yeah.
Oh, that sounds juicy.
It's very juicy. And if you talk to me in 5 minutes, I might tell you I'm not loving that.
Which would make perfect sense.
When it's happening, I'm not loving it, to be clear. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. Well, and that, it takes a special kind of curiosity and even bravery to like want to lean into your triggers. So I think it's a great example that we can all learn from for sure. So kudos to that.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Well, lovely. And I think once you go and sit with Iboga, maybe have to have you back on just so then you can give your ibogaine versus Iboga breakdown, because I would love to hear all about that. Then
you're going to keep me honest and accountable that I'm going to follow through with that calling. I like it.
That's right.
Accept it.
Okay. Done deal. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us this last hour, Kat. Like, again, definitely go follow her if you have interest in any of these things, or if you just want insights into being a death doula or loss and grief and love and non-psychedelic plants. So thanks again. And I look forward to the next time we connect. And I hope that'll be in person someday, somehow, somewhere.
I love that. Let's make that happen.
Yeah.